today we will continue reading from the Battle for China Essays on the Military History of the Sino-Japanese War. So last time we left off, I think they're drawing up national defense plans to guard against the potential Japanese invasion. So let's continue. In that year, the Military Affairs Commission promulgated the General Defense Guideline. It contained two alternative approaches towards a Japanese invasion. The first, conservative in nature, stipulated that nationalist troops should hold predetermined key positions and use protracted warfare to thwart the enemy. So this is the thinking of World War I, where you sort of hold on to your defensive positions and you grind the enemy out in a war of attrition. Towards the second half of World War I, at least, Philippe Pétain kind of way of thinking. The second plan proposed that in order to stop the enemy's ambition to invade China and protect the integrity of our territory, China will concentrate its best forces and carry out decisive battles in appropriate regions to defeat the enemy. So this is more the first phase of World War I. You can also think of it as more maneuver warfare, but China does not have the mechanized units or the tanks to support this kind of attack if you're thinking along the lines like that. So it's more a traditional aggressive strategy. So there are two strategies here. They're really opposite each other. Our priority is to defeat enemy stations stationed along the Yangtze River and along the seacoast. Because, for example, if the second plan fails, then you would have lost your best units to actually hold your key positions with, which means that your first plan can no longer be carried out. And similarly, in the first plan, if your best units are pinned down by enemy troops in key positions, then they cannot really be spared to carry out key offensives. So there are somewhat conflicting goals. The well execution of one plan could be to the detriment of the other. Our priority is to defeat enemy stations. So let me just go ahead and pull up a map for that so that we know what. Of course, like this YouTube video assumes minimal understanding of Chinese geography because I myself have minimal understanding of Chinese geography. So as you see, here is the Yangtze River. This river sails all the way up to Chongqing, I think. If you go all the way, some branches of the river, if you follow this line, you'll go all the way to Chongqing, which will eventually become the wartime capital of China. So if you look at this, river, it really divides China into two halves. It's really the lifeline of China. So being able to defeat enemy troops on this river means guarding the lifeline of China. Otherwise, Japanese units can sail in directly through this river and cut China in half. Also capturing all the important economic centers and cities along this river, which there's a lot of. Also the seacoast as well. This goes without saying for most political situations. The important ports and economic centers are on the coast, as with any nation. So these are important places to consider. In August 1935, German military advisor General Alexander von Falkenhausen, so we'll hear that name a lot, I think, in the future, because he sticks around for quite a while, submitted a recommendation to Chiang Kai-shek, until the Nazi government recalls him, that is. He predicted that Japan would follow these three routes of advance into China. So let's see how good his predictions are. So one ran from North Hebei to Zhengzhou city. So, for this area, I'm not quite sure where Zhengzhou is. So here to here. I think if I'm correct, that's along the lines of maybe the Peking-Wuhan railways. maybe I should use Google for this. This is not very good at searching this up. There's a World War II line probably. Yeah, these don't seem like World War II lines. Yeah, this is what we're talking about. So, so if he made this prediction, he's probably pretty much correct about this, because the Japanese army did go along the Peking-Wuhan Railway for one direction of attack, or also known as the Qinghan Tielu. But if you look at the history, hoping they would have a historical map, but perhaps not. If I switch to the Chinese version, will they have a map? They will not also. Okay. Well, do not fret. I think the book itself actually also provides a map, but let me just note down it's 117. So I believe the book also itself provides some maps, although for the length of the book, some 600 pages, the amount of maps are quite limited, so we'll have to probably come back to these maps very often. So let me just rotate this. So as you can see, the Peking-Zhengzhou direction is exactly the events direction of the Japanese army, the Japanese First Army. So he predicted that basically perfectly. I think he will also predict the second direction from Tianjin to Jinan, going down this railway. And then also the third direction towards the west. So let's see if he predicts those directions. So far he's doing pretty good. Let's see, 117. Yes, so the second from Shandong towards Xuzhou, yeah, that's exactly correct. So that follows the outlines of the Xuzhou battle, or Xuzhou Huizhan, where the Japanese army attempted to attack Xuzhou from the northeast, essentially trying to cut off the Chinese units stationed there and encircling them. But I never see a good map of this. That's the problem. There's always these it's either one of these very complicated battle maps that's very hard to decipher, or it's like a really simple map that doesn't show anything. It's very frustrating. The book actually has a good map also for this, I think, but just having to switch back and forth is not the best. So I think it was right after this list of events, the chronological list of big events that happened. The map is right after that. So here you can see that. Excuse me. Let me see. I keep doing that, right? So, if I'm not wrong, this Xuzhou Huizhan will follow, like, this arrow will go down towards Xuzhou eventually. Like, I think this is Xuzhou. Xuzhou is the intersection between these two important rail lines. One, I think, coming in from this area, and one from Tianjin. I think the key part of, well, before I blabber on some more, let's actually find some proof of what I'm saying. Yeah, okay, Xuzhou is a little bit far out from this intersection. But I think the key was because the Japanese army was in the south by, I think, December of 1937, they reached Nanjing. There they committed a very big atrocity, one of the biggest known to man up to that date. And then they, I think, went up north following this route. And then another Japanese army coming in from Tianjin went south. So if you look at the map, I think their intention was to essentially, if I can actually get this working, their intention essentially following the north and the south to encircle all the Chinese units stationed in this area. most of the Chinese units were able to escape. Big Chinese force made a stand at Taizhuang, where they held down enemy forces and allowed a significant portion of Chinese divisions to escape into the west before this area was cut off. And they sort of held the railway junction here. So this guy is getting it entirely correct so far. He's 2 out of 2. I mean, for someone who was looking at the map from, let's say, 2 years ago, 1935, when the war occurred in 37, he's doing pretty well. So let's go back to, if I can, I'm sorry, I have to find it. Shoot. No, this is too much. I think it's page 117 for the PDF preview. Yeah, so he's 2 out of 2. And his third suggestion is across the Yangtze River to the capital. Oh, wow. Along the Yangtze to Wuhan. So that's entirely correct. So all his 3 directions of prediction were entirely correct. This is unbelievable how he predicted all these 3 routes of invasion. This man's a genius. Okay. He believed that Japan would send its strongest forces along its third route. That is also correct, I think, because there was a big battle in Shanghai where Japanese troops met up with significant resistance from the Chinese units. So they sent a lot of troops from Japan and also from the north of China to reinforce the area and eventually come up this way. So I think it was probably their strongest force, because China certainly dedicated its strongest force in the south. Von Falkenhausen therefore suggested that China should regard the Yangtze River as the main combat area. I mean, also, like, he's a genius, but don't get me wrong, like, what he's saying is also not impossible to see. Of course, we have foresight, but what I will say is, of course, Japanese units will operate along the rail lines because that's where the supply is. And if you're a modern army with modern equipment, you need supplies. It's a basic fact of life. And the fact is, there are not many railroads in China during the 1930s. So, of course, you have to follow the railways, right? This is one of them. Predict the first route. This is another one of them. Predict the second route. And then across the river is where the most heavily economic region of China is. So, but again, solid predictions. 3 out of 3. So he proposed that Sichuan should be regarded as a final place of retreat. Again, a genius prediction, because it's exactly what happened. Or maybe he planned it. In 1936, a preliminary draft for a new national defense plan divided China into 4 zones: a war zone, defense zone, internal security zone, and preparation area. The war zones included 10 provinces. So if we can, let us take a look, because it would be good to have the map by our side as this happens. Once again, let's see if I can pull up a map of China from the 1930s. So we can just get a map of the provinces going. Oh, this is the Civil War. That's too late. We're not looking at that. Okay, so oh wow, this is all the Romanized spell. This is clearly a Western map. Okay. We'll just use Chinese. Oh crap, okay. This is from the Qing Dynasty. Some of these are really old. Okay, no. Let's just go back, because then I can't explain it if all the characters are in Chinese. That was not very smart. Actually, a modern map might also suffice. I mean, it doesn't have to be from the 1930s. So there are So all the war zone provinces, for example, like if you look, Chahar, which is I think this area, Suiyuan, which is that area, Hebei, which is here, Shandong, Henan, Jiangsu, Zhejiang, which is here, Fujian, Guangdong. So you see it along the coast, also against the north, basically against the Great Wall, and also along the coast. The general defense guidelines state that if the situation was unfavorable, the troops in the war zone should ultimately retreat to their predetermined resistance lines. So essentially, it seems like the war zone is the front line, but you can fall back. Also indicated that Nanjing, Nanchang, and Wuchang would serve as bases for resistance south of the Yangtze River, and Taiyuan, Zhengzhou, Luoyang, Xi'an, and Hankou would serve as such north of the Yangtze River. So yeah, you see Nanjing is here, Nanchang, Wuchang, actually I don't know where that is. Man, my Chinese geography is so bad. That is ridiculous. Okay, let's see. Okay, so it's right next to Wuhan, yeah. Well, actually, isn't that the two halves of Wuhan, Hankou and Wuchang? If I'm not mistaken, I think, yeah. It's like Budapest. There are two halves of the city. Let me see if I can actually, or maybe I could be stupid. That would probably make more sense. Let's see. What am I doing? Oh, so I guess they are like different names for the same place. But I was thinking that Hankou and Nanchang are two parts of the same city, two halves of the same city. But it does not really matter that much, I suppose, because you see that these base areas are scattered along the lines of resistance. Because if the troops from Nanjing fail, they're going to fall back to Wuhan and Nanchang and so on. And that's south of the river. So you see the river flows like this, and then it's south of the river. North of the river, you have Taiyuan, which is your base in Shanxi. So that's where Yan Xishan, the warlord's armies, are stationed here. If you look at the geography of Shanxi, there is actually a good place for resistance. The reason is because there's a huge mountain there. If you look at the topography, it's a heavily mountainous area, and Taiyuan is a great place to organize its resistance because it can control this plain and also hold out in these mountains against the east. So yeah, great place to launch warfare against a superior enemy. Zhengzhou, Luoyang, probably around this area, but I'm not familiar. Famous ancient city. Xi'an, yeah, and Hankou. Well, that's probably what Hankou is the north part of the city, and Nanchang is the south part. That's probably what it was, right? So, yeah, we'll see these cities again. This won't be the first time we see them. In January 1937, in issuing its annual war plan, the Chinese General Staff Department suggested 3 possible regions for military conflict between China and Japan. The plan contained 2 proposals. Proposal A emphasized long-term combat. If the situation is unfavorable, China should carry out its plan of protracted warfare and gradually force the enemy to expand their strengths while seizing any opportunity to take to the offensive. So this is like sort of fighting a war of attrition and fighting on our own terms. We are only attacking when we see an opportunity. This proposal focused on the Peking-Wuhan Railway and stated that China should concentrate its forces and seek to defeat Japan immediately. If this failed, Chinese forces should fall back to predetermined defensive positions, regain strength, and then prepare to shift to the offensive in an effort to destroy the Japanese invaders. So I'm not sure what exactly the war plan is, but it seems to involve a surprise attack somehow. Proposal B, China's forces would attempt to prevent the enemy from invading China. So the first one is more like immediately attack. If we fail, fall back, and then prepare to attack again. Proposal B, China's forces would attempt to prevent the enemy from invading China. The aim is to exhaust the enemy's strength in China within a certain period. Along the coast from Shandong Peninsula to the lower Yangtze, south of the Hangzhou Bay, China should resolutely halt the enemy's attempts to land its forces. So this is more about limiting the naval capacity of Japan, while Plan A is more about limiting the land transportation capability of Japan. As we see, the naval forces of Japan will play a big role in the Chinese wars, especially in the Battle of Shanghai, where they landed naval detachments behind the Chinese army and almost encircled it along the coast from Shandong Peninsula. So this is sort of like resisting beach landings. This is what the Germans did in Normandy against the Allied coalition. In the North, China should attack the enemy's units from north to the Great Wall and seize opportunity to enter Manchuria with our main forces. This is incredibly optimistic. They're thinking of attacking. This is a very German plan. The basic goal proposals A and B. So for Plan A, I think it was more land focused, and for Plan B, it was focused on halting their naval offensives and attacking on land. For China to stop the enemy north of the Great Wall on the northern front, stop any enemy advances east of Peking and Tianjin, and prevent Japanese landings along the eastern coast. Well, this is a very smart plan because you want to fight in a limited front. Don't give the Japanese the opportunity to seize your railways, and then you can try to fight them that way. Because on a narrow front, you might have a bigger chance of succeeding by stacking lots of men. If they spread you out, their quality of units are on average better than yours, and they're winning all across the front. There's not much you can do because you don't have the reserves to back them up. But if it's a small front, you can keep funneling in reserves because you have more men. Before the Marco Polo Bridge incident, the nationalist government completed some of the major projects provided for in the plan. Established 6 military supply depots at Nanjing, Bengbu, Xinyang, Huayin, Nanchang, and Wuchang. Oh, I didn't know where these depots are actually. I think I could benefit from looking these up actually. I've never heard of these places. I mean, I must be stupid. Okay. Oh. Okay, right. So I'm going to try and attempt to assume these are railway junctions, and the supply is stored in the Peking Pukou, Peking Shanghai, Tianjin Pukou, Peking Lianyungang, Lanzhou, Fujian, and Zhejiang areas. Okay, that's okay. I'm afraid that might be a little bit out of my reach, but I think we should still try and target and identify where these areas are. Okay, maybe let's move on. Under these 6 depots was 29 small warehouses, storehouses, and 16 larger storehouses to be used for field combat. Nanchang and Wuchang would serve as the national core depots. These depots were to store 60 million rounds of small arms ammunition at various sites north of the Yangtze River, 40 million at Wuchang, 100 million at Nanjing, sufficient for 20 divisions for 3 months. So I think they're all along the Yangtze River, these places like Nanchang, Nanjing, and well, Wuchang is not. Wuchang is like up here. Oh, sorry, Nanchang is not. Nanchang is like below the river. So you have like these 3 storage sites here. So these 3 areas are the core depots, and then there are some north of the river as well, because these 3 I think are all on the river or south of it. They have grain for 500,000 persons and fodder for 100,000 horses for 1 month. Horses are used a lot. I mean, don't blame the Nationalist Army in World War II, because the trucks are not always available, even for the Germans. and 3 million gallons of automatic automotive gasoline and 2.5 million gallons of aviation gasoline. Interesting. I didn't know they had such large preparations for their planes and trucks. 10 rare hospitals were to be established to accommodate 100,000 casualties and 20 temporary hospitals to treat 100,000 or 10,000 wounded near the front. That's not a lot, really, 10,000 casualties, but it's something. Medical supplies sufficient to sustain 100 divisions for duration of 6 months were also good. That's a lot. 100 divisions, you think about it, that's 1 million men for 6 months. So, they're really starting to prepare on a large scale. Construction of anti-aircraft facilities in major cities such as Nanjing and Wuhan was also begun. However, when the war began in July 1937, not all projects were completed. If you realistically look at this is of course a large-scale preparation, but it's by no means sufficient. I mean, if you think about it, 20 divisions for 3 months, that's not a lot. You can use 20 divisions in one front, and Japanese are attacking in 3 directions. You can't use 20 divisions in 3 directions. That will absolutely not be enough. Those ammunition supplies are not enough. And also, if you look at the medical supplies, it's a lot better, but you can't fight a war for 6 months. And China definitely has 100 divisions, so it's not looking good. Unlike the Japanese army, Chinese forces focus on defensive strategies. In July 1934, Chiang Kai-shek addressed the Mount Lushan military officer training camp. I think in Lushan he will also give some important speeches and conferences later on. He stated that 4 possible strategies existed to deal with Japan. The preferred option was to rely on defense as offense. Okay. The second option was to build fortresses in several places. The third option was to defend positions tenaciously. The final strategy was to focus on guerrilla warfare and use irregulars such as guerrilla and volunteer forces to tie down the enemy's major force. So they were thinking quite ahead, and the fourth strategy is quite interesting. The first 3 were kind of not clear, I guess. They seemed normal. Not many details discussed here. Chiang stressed that China should mobilize its people so that the entire nation could participate in the war. This is important. National mobilization, the stirring of national sentiment. This is very important. In a speech delivered in January 1938, Chiang stated that guerrilla warfare was one of a kind. It was one kind of formal warfare and should be conducted by regular units with a high level of combat efficiency. This is problematic, of course, because about guerrillas not having, or if they're conducted by regular units, are they wearing standard uniforms, or are they hiding in the villages, or are they hiding in the geography? Who are the Japanese going to attack when the units are done fighting? There's a lot of issues here to be discussed. I mean, but of course, in this war, such issues won't matter. Morals and ethics when your nation is dying is not the biggest concern. Guided by Chiang's idea, the nationalist military regarded positional warfare as a major strategy, complemented by mobile warfare and guerrilla warfare. Okay, so again, positional defense. That's the World War I way of thinking. Mobile warfare is the World War II way of thinking. I guess guerrilla warfare is any time when you are a weaker power. When confronted by Japanese units with formidable firepower and mobility, nationalists drew several great losses after putting this military strategy to practice. So because they have superior everything, if you sit in your position, obviously it doesn't work well. As the war progressed, the nationalist military learned from their previous battles and adjusted their tactics. They began to value guerrilla warfare, and by the end of 1939, while preparing for the second stage of the war, Chiang Kai-shek adopted the concept that guerrilla warfare should be more important than regular warfare. Wow, that's a big turn. It ran from, didn't know that he had such a change of heart. Several guerrilla warfare cadre training classes were organized into training middle and senior military officers. In combat, the nationalist military deployed guerrilla units throughout the battlefield to wear down the enemy. The nationalist troops destroy roads to reduce the enemy's mobility, shifted towards the enemy's rear and exterior lines, and attacks enemy's supply lines. Yeah, that's a weak point. A modern army with heavy artillery, with aircraft, they need all that ammunition. In consequence, Japanese forces could not make their superiority tell, and once exhausted after an initial push, became vulnerable to Chinese counteroffensives. The most famous example of this strategy was the Chinese victory in the Third Battle of Changsha in 1942. I think they had 4 battles of Changsha, and they won the Chinese won the first 3, and they lost the last one. Organization, weapons, and logistics. Ooh, this could be interesting. Or horrible, let's see. There was a significant inequality between the Japanese and Chinese armies in terms of equipment. Table 3.1 compares the nationalist and Japanese division. In addition to the material listed above, each Japanese division also had 1 mechanized group with 39 military vehicles. So before we continue, actually, let's review the size of the Japanese division because I'm not quite familiar. Let's just look at the Japanese 1st Division as an example. Not football, that's different. Okay, so I don't speak Japanese, but yeah, the Chinese characters look correct. Where can I get some actual numbers? Let's see. So here it says, no, that's the Marine Corps. So AI says 20,000, but okay, yeah, so a division is about 20,000 men. So I think maybe on the Chinese side it's 10,000, but I could be very, very wrong. So out of these 20,000 men, they have about 39 light military vehicles, 21 light armored cars, 6,700 horses, 200 to 300 automobiles, and special troops, poison gas teams. Now that's really well equipped for the East Asian theater. Nationalist divisions did not have any of these. Yeah, okay, that's very sad. Also in Syria, Nationalist division had an armored regiment. That unit had fewer than 72 armored vehicles. That's actually not bad compared to these figures: 39 light military vehicles and 21 light armored cars. The problem is, I think, really is these vehicles cannot be replaced. These Japanese vehicles are manufactured in Japan and can be replaced. I think the nationalists probably imported a lot of British and French armored cars, and those are not replaceable once the Japanese blockades the Chinese coast. A major weakness was a lack of artillery. In 1936, the division officially had 1 artillery battalion divided into 3 artillery batteries with 12 guns total. Okay, does that mean that the battalion had 12 guns and each battery had 4? It seems like that's the case. It also had 1 mechanized cannon company with 4 direct fire weapons. So just for context, direct fire is when you just lay down your weapon and let's say you have big gun, okay, and then you just shoot directly at the enemy. So look at my excellent drawing here. Of course, you have more advanced weapons that does not only target the enemy directly. If the enemy is in a trench somewhere, let's say the enemy is in a trench, it's in an entrenched position, you can also have indirect fire. And what that means is the cannon will adjust for the situation and hit over the top instead of in a straight line. So generally you want your indirect fire because indirect fire can basically hit anywhere on the battlefield. It's not limited by terrain or geography, but direct fire is very limited. So So as we can see that they had, oh sorry, geez, I confused myself here. Right, 1 mechanized cannon company and 4 direct fire weapons. So this is the Chinese side, right? So they have about what, 12 guns for 10,000 men, and then 4 direct fire weapons. That's really not that useful because unless the enemy is charging right at you, then you can use them. So about 16 guns. Not sure if I'm reading that correctly. 16 guns for 10,000 men. That's really bad. A Japanese division had 4 infantry regiments and 1 mountain artillery or field artillery regiment. This, okay, is already looking. Each artillery regiment had 3 field artillery battalions and a howitzer battalion. Okay, so this is very important because they have actually the indirect fire. These are all big guns. And the infantry regiment itself had 1 mountain artillery section. This might be important because they'll be fighting a lot in the mountains eventually. The infantry battalion had 1 type 70 mountain gun section, 2 guns. In total, Japanese had 64 artillery pieces of various calibers. So just skip past to here. Seems like, yeah, Chinese division has 16 mountain or field artilleries. They also had the complement of regiment and battalion artilleries. One thing we have to know is because the Japanese division is bigger than the Chinese division by twice the size, basically, they have, the fact that they have more weapons is also reasonable. So if you divide by 2, you can see that about 24 guns, still a significant advantage. Battalion artillery divided by 2, 28. So it's closer than you would think. But then, of course, you have to consider probably the Japanese calibers are much larger, and their ammunition and calibers are probably unified in the logistical structure, where all the Japanese units have the same guns, and the Chinese units have guns of various imports and availability based on their ability to be produced in the Chinese manufacturing industry, which will probably only supply small caliber from a certain point. So they had 4 times as many as the Chinese division, but their size is twice as large, so twice as many as the Chinese division. And the far higher quality. This is more important, I think. In reality, in 1936, 12 of the 20 elite Chinese reformed divisions still lacked artillery battalions. So for some context, these reformed divisions are supposed to be the elite German trained divisions. So these German military advisors come over here, train up Chinese military divisions. They receive a batch of German military equipment, but not the heavy weapons. So all the light squad weapons, they sort of get. And they also do have good tactics. The ordnance in the reformed divisions was composed mostly of the old Type 60 mountain gun. Okay. In the entire country, few of these 200 divisions had any artillery at all. Okay, so again, like I said earlier, 100 divisions for 6 months medical, that's not enough. They have 200 divisions. If they did have it, the guns were mostly those that have fallen into disuse by field artillery regiments or mountain or field artillery pieces that have been provided to local forces. Some units even use trench mortars to serve as a stopgap measure. So again, the uniformity of the equipment, the logistics would be a nightmare. The ability of these things to be replaced is extremely questionable. Artillery weapons came from various countries, but they often lacked observation and signal components and were short of ammunition. So again, this quality matters. It's not just about the numbers. Most mountain guns and field artillery were the Type 75. Although they could deliver fire support, their range was limited and they inflicted little damage. So actually, I'm feeling adventurous today. Why not take a look? Let's take a look. Let's take a look at these guns. Let's take a look at these Type 70 guns. The Japanese gun. Oh, that can't be right. That's a rocket launcher. No. That's a mountain gun. That's not a rocket launcher. Yeah, I'm looking for a mountain gun. Winchester model. Okay, these guys just do not have data on this thing. Okay, here we go. List of mountain artillery. Okay, Japan's gotta be in here. 75. That's the. Okay, we're getting close. Type 41. Okay, let me just sort by country. Excuse me. Yeah, these three guys, but none of these are Type 70. Guess it doesn't hurt to take a look anyhow. So 1908, that's pretty darn early. In fact, firing rate 7,000 meters. Let's take a look at these guns. So 75 is pretty much the standard, like, or 76, right? I think it's all these big guns are around this diameter or something, or caliber. It's the size of the thing that goes into the I forgot what it's called. Darn it! It's the size of the oh jeez again. I was so stupid. It's the size of the shell you put in. It's how large it is in terms of the diameter. Or is it the radius? Oh, it's the diameter. Yep. So this one's 6,500. Yep. And this one's a 10 millimeter, so it's not gonna. Oh, sorry, it's 105. 105 millimeter. That's probably the biggest one. These ones are huge. Okay, almost 8,000. Yeah, makes sense. So those are the Japanese guns. Apparently, Chinese guns are not on the list, so we'll have to look for them. So let's see. Type 60 mountain gun. Part of this is extremely interesting because this is super obscure stuff. The Chinese say they're super obscure, so you're kind of looking at things that people kind of don't really have any. Oh, maximum firing range is 24. Oh, because it's a Soviet gun, right? Right. But this is used up in 1950, so that's probably not the Type 60 that those guys were talking about. Let's see, Republic of China. No, they just don't have it. Yeah, they just do not have it. What about Type 75? Oh, you know what? Actually, I think. Nah, that's not right. Was this gun used by Japan? Oh, apparently it was used by China. Okay, so this gun will be quite decent because it's German made. It's German design and Swedish built. So if they can get this guy working, they can probably beat up quite a lot of Japanese artillery, but the ammunition unfortunately is limited. In 1937, for example, in the fighting in Shanghai, the mountain artillery of the Guangxi 21st Army Group had a range of, oh my gosh, imperial units. I'm very bad at imperial units. I do apologize. So 1,000 meters. Okay, while Japanese field artillery could hit targets at 8,000. Okay, so we roughly saw earlier that all the Japanese guns were in excess of 8,000 meters, which is probably about 9,000 yards. I don't know. Or 10,000. So these figures are roughly reasonable. Yeah. Domestically made mountain artillery suffer from inferior steelmaking technology in China. The gun shields were poor quality steel, and the gun barrels turned red after firing several rounds and were at risk of exploding. So imagine you're in an artillery duel. The shield does not protect you from enemy fire. I think, like, when you have a gun, like a World War II cannon, the shield is kind of like this protective piece that protects you from shrapnel when the enemy hits you. That part is not good. the gun barrel itself will melt or suffer issues when you fire too much or deform, and then you can't fire, you can't defend. So probably the strategy is fire a few rounds from your battery, and then evacuate the entire battery, and then relocate to another position. Yeah, that's about what you can do. The Nationalist Ordnance and equipment listed in the tables above were only for reformed divisions, and not all these met the necessary specifications and standards, right? So, like, when you are looking at these, you're looking at the elite of the elite in China. The elite 10 or 20 divisions out of the 200 divisions of the Chinese army have this equipment that is various calibers and quality, and about half the strengths of, in terms of equipment density, it's equipment per man, it's about half. Like looking at the rifles, seems like if you multiply by 2, light machine guns, heavy guns, again, it seems close to the Japanese division. The guns are about half. The grenade launchers, light machine guns are actually looking good. Heavy machine guns looking good. Rifles are a bit lacking. But then again, these are the German trained divisions, right? So the rest of the 180 divisions, you can expect to have absolutely nothing, basically. And now these more worthy equipment local forces vary greatly in quality. Some local units actually have better equipment than that nationalist units. I doubt they had better than the elite units, but normal units, sure. For instance, before the Sino-Japanese War, Yunnan units had French anti-tank guns and heavy machine guns. Oh, that's interesting. It probably, if you think about it, there's some reason to that because the French had Indochina. So the French Indochina, or Vietnam had a border, land border with Yunnan, so maybe they had some weapon deals. The air-cooled French machine guns proved better than the German water-cooled machine guns and nationalist units. Ooh, interesting. But most local troops had inferior equipment. The forces on their well, this kind of goes against the grain because you would expect the landlocked, really far away region in the corner of China doesn't have the best equipment because it doesn't have the best economy, but it has nice French imports, so it doesn't matter. The forces under Wang Mingzhang of the 122nd Division from Sichuan, which bravely defended Tengxian County during the Xuzhou battle, had light and heavy machine guns made in Sichuan, which often broke down. Their Type 79 rifles were also made in Sichuan, some arms dated from the Qing dynasty. So the Qing dynasty, I think, ended around the early 1900s. So yeah, these guns are made in the 1900s, or made in Sichuan itself. The range was limited, and sometimes it broke down after firing fewer than 100 rounds. Also, the supply, the logistics of replacing those Sichuan-made guns when you're fighting on the seacoast and you have to bring in guns all the way from Sichuan, and your railways are constantly being bombarded by the Japanese Air Force, it is not going to end well. Prior to the war, nationalists and local forces, of course, if you want arms from the central government, that's another issue. They probably won't give it to you. Prior to the war, nationalists and local forces had weaponry from various foreign and domestic sources. Even domestically made weapons did not conform to one standard. Those made in Hanyang and Manchuria different. So Hanyang is a famous arms manufacturer plant in China. Manchuria different in design and specification. Manchuria is where most of the heavy industry in China were located in the onset of World War II. German, French, Russian, Japanese, and Italian products were also not uniform. Yeah. They don't have an industry, but they use a good chunk of their economy to try to bolster their defense. The arms of even a single unit did not conform to a single standard, let alone that for all of China's armed forces, thus creating enormous logistics problems with subsequent effects on combat effectiveness, especially in the initial stages of the war. Also, you don't get the economy of scale because all these things are different. Nationalist ordnance factories produce around 3 million rounds of small arms ammunition a day, potentially ensuring a sufficient supply, but this incompatibility of ammunition and weapons reduces the usable quantity of small arms ammunition. Yeah, so not only do you have to have the ammunition, you have to have the right guns to go with the ammunition, You have to produce those guns in the proper amount, and those troops have to receive those guns at the end of logistics. So you have to protect your. You have to have sufficient anti-air and aircraft aerial supremacy to protect your supply lines and all of that. So it's a huge issue. Chinese communication facilities were poor, and the National Army signal units were not independent but were part of the engineer units. Radio was of low quality, and in case of emergencies, telegrams often could not be sent out for days. I mean, what's the point of having a telegram if you can't send them for days? Orders often had to be dispatched by post. In 1937, the entire country had only 3,000 military vehicles. So if we are looking back at that figure earlier, I think, did they list any Chinese divisions having cars? No, not here. Okay. Necessitating reliance on horses and mules for support. So imagine this, right? You have 200 military divisions and 3,000 military vehicles. What that means is about 15 vehicles per division, per 10,000 men. 20 nationalist divisions needed 10,647 horses and 20,688 mules. Yep. At the end of 1935, they had only 6,106 horses and 4,351 mules. That's very sad. They didn't have enough of the livestock. According to one statistics, in 1936, the mortality rate of nationalist military horses was as high as 5%. The number even reached 10% for some units. Yeah, so imagine receiving 10% less supplies at the end of the year than you did in the beginning, and just from the horses alone, not even from the bombed out factories, the crippled railways, the fact that half of your army's logistics guys are dead. Yeah. This distribution of weaponry was a source of dispute during army reorganization programs after the Northern Expedition. So Northern Expedition was when Chiang successfully represented the Republic of China, and he went up north to basically defeat some northern, like, I don't want to say imperialists, more like warlords. Although Chiang's own forces belonged to regular army, the quality of the equipment they received varied widely. At the time, domestic production of weaponry was limited, and only imports could not make up the difference. Priority was given to small arms. That's smart. Chiang Kai-shek used army organization to weaken forces uncommitted to his rule. Staff officers of the Nationalist Army noted that forces loyal to Chiang received the best weapons. So that's what I meant when I said if you're from the Sichuan army and you're far away from home and you're fighting on the front and you lose your guns and they're all domestically manufactured, this is a long way to go. Because of the Northwestern and Northeastern forces nurtured good relations with the KMT, they received relatively better weapons. While Shanxi troops received inferior ones. Yeah, so Shanxi troops are from here. They might be okay because their home base is surrounded by mountains, so if they can't fight, they will just like live to fight another day. They'll find some place to hide, at least for now. So at least they can do is that. Troops in the Guangxi faction received even poorer weapons because Guangxi leaders had stronger political ambitions. Yeah, also Guangxi has a history of rebellion and disagreeing with Chiang Kai-shek, the central government in general. They're also the home of the revolution, so they definitely have a lot of political ambition in general. They are home of the revolution that initialized the creation of the founding of the republic. So they definitely think of themselves having a big role in the republic. The forces of Shi Yousan, Li Hongchang, and Sun Dianying. Oh, I don't know these guys actually. Shi Yousan I know because he'd be an interesting guy later. And I'm quite ignorant about Chinese history, I feel like. Oh, it's this guy. No, it can't be. I mean, it's Chang, not Zhang. No. Yeah, this can't be this guy. This guy is Qing Dynasty guy. Yeah. No, it's
it's not him. Yeah, okay, this guy. Sun Dianying. Okay, we see that later on. He joins the interesting government.
This guy. These bandit troops understandably receive poor weapons, so they're not even belonging to any local faction as a regular military. They're kind of just bandits. While the distribution of arms increased the propensity of some local forces to side with the KMT, it alienated others, inadvertently causing additional years of turmoil after the Northern Expedition. So, delaying national unification, delaying unity is a great way to make sure you don't win a war in the future. But I mean, yeah, sometimes personal ambitions get in the way of a lot of things. Okay, let's stop here for now. Thanks for listening.